sentence, adding, is, let's just read the whole thing. The rezoning process takes approximately 3 or 4 months. Planning Commission, this is what I'm adding. The Planning Commission reserves the right to make a recommendation on the application that's submitted or on an amended application requested. And I talked to Larry about this briefly.
That's okay. Now, is that better? Okay, so what we're saying is the planning commission has the right to make, of course, we make a recommendation on the application that's submitted, or an amended application requested at the time of deliberation, which means that gives the chance for the applicant to say, I'd like to amend my, if they're before the planning commission, I'd like to amend my request to, instead of an RS8 to an RS15. And the planning commission could consider it then.
I don't know about that one. That leaves, we've got enough gray area as it is, and I'm worried that may create a little more gray area that get into the he said, she said.
Why not? Why continue to drag this out for another month?
They would also probably have to revise their drawing, because you had a drawing.
If it's a bud, they would.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a PUD, they would.
Then you wouldn't, if you amended it,
After this.
you'd probably be better off in that case to say, I want to amend this, I'd like to defer this to the next meeting, and walk and go correct it.
Now, on a
because-
typical just rezoning, where it's not a PUD, then I could see this maybe being, as long
Right,
as it was
right.
dead set clarified. But if it's a PUD, this,
You don't have to have a new drawing, because
Not
that
new drawing
that drawing
anyway,
is part of your zoning.
it's gonna get deferred again.
You could amend that to say that, couldn't you?
Or we could just say, it doesn't apply in the case of a PUD, if you want to do that.
I think you have to.
You'd have to on that, yeah. It's not applicable to PUDs,
All right.
because we've got a good reason for it. It's not like you're singling somebody else. All PUDs would have to go that way, and the others, you could do that.
Right, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I didn't want it to change somebody's PUD presentation and not have to present a new plan,
So
no.
just exempt PUDs.
PUD application, okay. That's a good point, good. Okay. And then on the last page, for office use, we note when it was received and the filing fee was paid. We put a note for, and this is really for the record, obviously, for the record that we would keep with this application as far as our files. And even in the minutes, that it could even be made part of the minutes of the planning commission. The date of favorable recommendation and then the date of the final approval by the Board of Commissioners, or concurrence or final approval, whichever one would be applicable.
That's absolutely vital under the vested rights statute. That
Yeah,
needs to be on.
yeah, good. And then what I was adding would be on the application, this is sort of like a reminder that we are looking, the planning commission in rezoning cases, among other things, we're looking at the findings that need to be met in order for us to give a favorable recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. And these would be the 5 things that need to be clear in everybody's mind that it's fine, that's okay, and ready to go, which would be the amendment, the change is in agreement with the general plan for the area, which means we will also need to present to the Planning Commission a copy of the area's plan In other words, I think what we need on a rezoning that I haven't given you would be a copy of the land use plan for that area, so you could compare that to what they're asking for. Because that comes up, and you need to be able to see that. Also, the applicant can see that this is what our plan is, and this is what you're asking for, so you understand where you are when you're going in. Okay. It's been determined that the legal purposes for which zoning exists are not contravened. It has been determined that there will be no adverse effect upon adjoining property owners unless such effect can be justified by overwhelmingly public good or welfare. And it's been determined that no property owner or small group of property owners will benefit materially from the change to the detriment of the general public. And it's been determined that conditions affecting the area have changed sufficient extent to warrant an amendment or a change in the zoning map. So that, I think, gives us a more thorough application process. Also gives the Planning Commission a little more structure in what they're deliberating on. Because if a member feels like, I think this might be detrimental to the general public, then that's something that's a legitimate objection to raise. But what I'm trying to do, though, since these findings are in our code now, putting them on the application so that in each case we deliberate that these are our findings, so we have a uniform, kind of treat every case the same way through the process, if that makes sense.
Frankly, will also give the person making the application a list that he can look at and say, I've got to meet at least these. If I don't meet these, I'm not going to get approved.
Yeah.
So he's not out there searching in the dark and says, I'll
Yeah,
submit this.
and I think, right, Larry, and also, if the planning commission, recommended denial, they could cite one of these as not being met.
And then state the reason why they think it don't meet it,
Yeah, right.
because you'll have that in the minutes.
Well, I mean, we're not in the practice of doing the finding of facts, kind of stating, but really technically, we should be. When we deny something, we should say, this is why it's not.
If you don't, if it ever goes up to court on writ of certiorari, they're going to send it back to you to have those findings.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to produce them for the court, because those normally go on common law writs, and on common law writs, you don't get a hearing de novo, you get a hearing on the minutes. And if they don't have those, they'll send them back to you, give you a month, 6 weeks, or whatever to have a hearing and come up with them.
So if we got in that process, it would not only legally protect us, but it probably would help the developer or whoever's coming in front.
Well, it would keep you from having to have the embarrassment of the court that says, I can't
Say,
find
go
any reason
do it.
why you did it.
Yeah.
Other than that, Larry, everything seemed to be okay with it?
Pardon?
Other than that, everything okay with it?
Yeah, I think that would be great, because there might be some other things out there that you find. You're not saying that if there's something that's
No.
overriding, you can put it in there, but it'll give you a list of this is the
I
minimum.
agree, that's the problem we've had in the past.
Yeah.
I didn't know. I'd make a motion that we move it forward.
One more question. On page 1 of the application, under request number, is that something that the applicant fills out, or is that something that's filled out when they
That's
turn
something
it in?
we fill out.
Okay, so maybe in parentheses to be filled in by the city of Fairview? So that they're not putting a number in there?
Yeah, I can put a note on
After
that.
section 1, it says on section 1, application information, everything above there,
Yeah.
assuming you make.
But we can put the sign by the city.
Yeah, that's not a problem.
That's not a problem, nah. I see what you're saying. That's just an identification number that shows the year it's submitted and the case number in this year. So,
Gotta make it as idiot-proof as possible.
yeah, that's right.
I'll second Tony's motion.
And Frank, if we go back to the first page, are we gonna look at that, or is this a motion in general?
No, go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
I assume that you'd want to add this, say, paragraph 6,
Oh.
that the rezoning request application
Oh, okay.
is attached, or whatever.
We'll just
which
make that
it
number
paragraph
6, yeah. We make that number 6, okay. All right.
You Anything else before motion?
Just the next, oh, we've already had our first and second, and all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then the next, the only other thing is a housekeeping thing, which I found in section 16-110.1, says that applications initiated by any federal, state agency, or any department of the city of Fairview or the county of Wilson. And so I think that's, I'm not sure, even though it's consistent with the Mount Juliet, right? Isn't Mount Juliet in Wilson? Yeah, so maybe we were supposed to be in Wilson.
Move to approve the change.
We don't change that. If I ever have to go to court on this, I'm gonna have some real egg on my face because I don't want this.
We got a first and second.
That's my stamp.
Yeah, okay, all in favor?
You have a question for?
I'm sorry, no, not about this.
All right, go ahead.
Go ahead and take your vote because my question has nothing
It
to do
was
with it.
unanimous, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I assume by this, it's just an operation thing. You want me to do the ordinance right doing this, or are you gonna revise your application?
I'm gonna revise the application.
And I'll do the ordinances, and we'll put the two together.
Put the two together, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Let me take a shot at it, and then if you want, but on the application, if you think it needs to be worded differently, you change it.
No, I think the application's fine. I
You
just
can
wanna
change
make
it.
sure, you probably got the original of that, and.
I do. Oh, I
if
can do that. I'll do
If I
that.
scan it in as a Word, I'm gonna
Yeah,
have to
I'll
go
do it
back
that
and
way.
rejuggle it.
Right.
I'll do the ordinances, and you do the
Yeah,
zoning.
all right,
and
yeah,
then-
because
I
that's,
mean, the
yeah,
application, we'll get
right,
'em
we'll do
together.
it that way, okay.
That sounds good to me.
Very good, all right. Does anybody else have anything
You don't see the Wi-Fi.
they'd like to make, any comments, any other things, issues they'd like to bring up? Okay, we're adjourned, yeah.
Next meeting is 25th.
Okay, wait a minute, what about our next meeting, Wayne, are we going to postpone?
We're gonna probably wait a minimum of 3 months before we have another.
Okay.
In the meantime, I believe maybe probably one in the fall.
Yeah.
October, somewhere around in there. And that'll give us a chance to research, give Will a chance to, he's got some issues he wants to do, with construction agreement. And, that'll give us a chance in, and, you know, if that's all right with everybody, that's, but I will, if something does come up that we really need to address, then we can always call a meeting.
And can I suggest, you know, with the whole trying to utilize Will and stuff, you know, maybe we should have these meetings before the planning commission. I don't know if people could get here at 6 and do, you know, unless it was something a lot on the agenda and we needed more time. That would save, because a lot of us would be here that second Tuesday. It saves Will from driving.
Right.
And so when we start back, we might want to consider that.
That's a good idea, yes.
Yeah.
Do
yeah.
they
And I-
take effect pretty much immediately, or do the planning commission votes to say, yeah, we want to take those recommendations and roll with it? Or-
Well, like what we did tonight, it'll go to the board and,
It'll-
BOC?
It goes to the planning
It's a-
commission for a recommendation, because
Yeah.
it's a zoning ordinance.
okay. and then
Okay.
All
we'll go-
zoning ordinances have to go to the planning commission. Planning commission don't have to approve it. They can send it up without any action. They can send it up with a recommendation for approval, recommendation for denial. The board has to vote on it, 2 readings, and you have to have a public hearing.
Okay.
Now, if it's something that's a resolution for the planning commission, it goes from here straight to the planning commission. They pass it, it's passed. But any ordinance has to go to the planning commission, and any zoning ordinance has to have a public hearing.
Okay, good.
I didn't catch the first part of your presentation. If it was as good as the last part, I'm sure it was an excellent presentation. Because I missed the first, wasn't supposed to be at the meeting, and I got here a little early because there wasn't any traffic. I don't know where they all went. But
It was just a bunch of crap at the beginning, wasn't it?
I laid it off to the schools not being in session, but at that time of night, who knows? But, I mean, it only takes me like 40 minutes at that time of day to get here, 20 minutes.
Wow.
And I didn't change speeds or anything, just wouldn't, I kept moving all the time instead of stopping. It was very informative.
Are we free?
Yeah,
The one question that I had, and I asked
Appreciate it,
Frank, I said, there's not any pumps in the sand part. I assume it
Tuesday?
gravity
didn't even
flows
have a
through,
meeting. We didn't have
comes
a
out in
forum,
a tank or a gutter, okay. and then it's pumped over to the other.
Is there,
You'll
I used to
call for
have
a
a
new
fish
meeting,
pond,
another
those usually
special
fish,
meeting?
they do a great job until the boats start getting old. You can look at
We'll
them,
be getting-
oh, these things are great, and they wouldn't
We'll
kill
be getting
nothing.
together though in,
I did tell Michael
July,
Roberts
because
that
we did meet with
I would like
the Industrial Development, the Middle Tennessee Industrial Development Association.